It's episode 2 of season 5, and the boys is back doing my favorite thing, making fun of really specific comic tropes. We're going to talk about episode 2 of season 5 of the boys, titled Teenage Kicks. I'm going to be doing it off camera because I'm in the middle of a move, but my cat Mortimer is still on my lap. He had to be, because this was a huge week for cats on the boys. As good as any of them have ever been. The episode opens with one of my favorite things this show does, which is it's A-Train's funeral. Obviously, the Seven and Vought have repurposed it. They've packaged it as Starlight killed A-Train. Homelander was obviously still his best friend and his team leader. So we get here a repurposed version of the A-Train song that in-universe exists called Faster, which you can find on YouTube. Came out in September 2021, and it just feels like a normal rap song. And that's one of the things that the boys is so great at, is when they make something that is a parody, much like the Lonely Island does and won't make them so special, is they don't just let the joke do all the work. It is a well enough written song and well produced video. I will always remember the line from that song, "I won't never touch me like an asymptote," just because as someone who remembers that from school, crazy pull and a very appropriate line. But you only know that this is that song, again, in gospel version, if you remember that from season 2 of The Boys. And I think one of the things that's so special about The Boys is it is now able to build on its own mythology. Take these memes and pieces of pop culture and repurpose them. I just think it's a really good callback. And we see this is the speech where Allfather tells everybody that everybody's demons, and they're turning little boys into little girls with garden shears. One small note that I kind of would have liked to see, I kind of wish all the superheroes had black versions of their costumes for the funeral. Just the exact same costume they wear, but in all black. And then somehow I wish Black Noir's was more black as part of the joke. But I like how uncomfortable Homelander is during this scene. There's a lot of reasons that could be. You can read that as him feeling kind of guilty about killing A-Train. You can read that as him feeling uncomfortable in a church because he doesn't believe in a power higher than himself. You could read that as him feeling threatened by Allfather, who is able to command this crowd and really get this reaction out of everyone, especially Firecracker, in a way that Homelander is not really able to anymore. He's able to create fear, but he's not able to inspire people with that fear, which is something he kind of used to be able to do. And I just think the Allfather costume is great. Really excellent, big stupid Shazam muscle suit. The purple and the gold, beautiful on the white pattern on the back of his cape. I think this character looks the most like Shazam usually looks. Even though I wouldn't say his powers really gel with Shazam. And I don't think he's secretly a young boy, although that'd be really funny. But Ezekiel, the previous superhuman priest, did not wear a superhero uniform while he was conducting his mass. But Allfather does, because of how much more extreme everything's gotten. I love it. Very happy to see Daveed Diggs. We're not going to, obviously, because there's so much going on, get that many new additions to the cast, it seems like. And he seems like one of the most significant ones so far. Here we get the reintroduction of Samir, which, again, I mentioned this in the last video. I don't understand why we have Samir and yet needed to rescue Frenchie. Unless, and the reasons I'll take here, A, maybe Frenchie is just good at making weapons out of things like this and weaponizing these different viruses, but it doesn't seem like you would need that. But you could also read this, and I'm noticing it now as I went back and watched it again. In that conversation, Butcher does not say we need Frenchie to create the virus. Starlight says we need Frenchie to create the virus, and Butcher agrees with her. Maybe Butcher is just sentimental and he wants everybody back. He wants to protect everybody he cares about, but he's Butcher. He's never going to admit that. And we get another really interesting moment with Butcher and Samir, where Butcher uses the killing that he did to motivate Samir by convincing Samir it's the person he doesn't like, which is what Homelander did in the scene before, blaming Starlighters for killing A-Train. So it is interesting how these two characters are so similar. Then everybody has sex, and I'm assuming MM reads a book or something while this is going on. I'm sure there will be people that say that they don't like the sex scene because it's not necessary, but I do think it is kind of necessary because it would be weird if all of these people met up again and didn't act this way, at least once, because of how strongly they all feel about each other. Then you get what might be my favorite scene of the episode, and this is Homelander talking to A-Train's coffin. Just because a lot of this reinforces what I was kind of talking about at the end of last week's episode, which is that Homelander does genuinely feel upset about this. And Homelander did sort of respect A-Train, because he does genuinely seem disappointed in A-Train. And so many of the other characters that were close to Homelander, Homelander is killed, right? He killed the original Black Noir, who Homelander did really seem to trust. He killed Sitwell, and he at least thinks he killed Maeve. It's clear that Homelander will use the Deep when he's convenient, but he does not respect the Deep. But he did kind of respect A-Train. Also, love this line read.
Pop Fang betrayed us both To William Butcher, no less. Huge mess, your fault. What did I do? What did I do?
And then we get what is my favorite, idea of the episode, which is the teenage kicks. Now, this is obviously a team that we're going to see has been mentioned a couple of times. It's kind of the Teen Titans. Some of the powers match up more one-to-one. It's kind of the New Mutants. And I'll say this, it is weird, a little bit, that we just did a show, Gen V, that was about superheroes about this age. And obviously all the ones we followed were good guys, but we never got any indication that these guys existed. And I understand why, it's hard to connect everything. But this would be the perfect time for them. And you wouldn't really need to do too much. Just show that, they went to that college, or the college kids are watching their TikTok videos, something like that. But it does feel weird that they're not connected at all. All right, but let's look at the teenage kicks. First of all, we have Rock Hard, who's the character that they went here to get. Because he's super strong, they need to see if the virus can kill Homelander, so they need someone strong to test it on. Now, originally, you'd think, oh, this is the Thing. And it is. But if you want to map it to another hero, you could say this is a take on Rockslide, who is an X-Men who's part of the Academy X team. But then you get the other three members of the Teenage Kicks. First one, Countess Crows, Countess of the Crows. For some reason, that's her entire name. And she's the knockoff Raven. And it's really funny that instead of actually being magic, she just owns and is able to work with and maybe command crows. It is funny because in a world where all these supers exist, you may not know what Countess Crow could do. Maybe they sell her as she's magical, she's got this connection to the dark dimension or whatever. But in reality, she can control crows. And because she is the moody goth one, she does the makeup tutorials. Love it. Then you got a hero named Jetstreak. He is, I would guess, the cannonball of this team, which is guy who can just fly. I mean, in reality, he's closer to Jetstream, the member of the Hellions, but still similar. And then She-Line. So She-Line is some sort of Catwoman parody. And she's dressed very similarly, and if you recognize it, this is a great joke. In the really bad, although I think it's kind of fun, Catwoman costume from Batman Earth 1. To the point where it's kind of the same mask, and it's the same color scheme, although it's a little bit reversed. Love that she's advertising diet water. That's very funny. And yeah, this is the kind of thing, these teenage kicks, I could watch a show of. And obviously, you have Gen V. Not the same kind of thing. Gen V is about college students, and also they're uncovering mysteries, and they're trying to become better people. I would be totally fine with one character in this who's normal, Countess Crows, Countess of the Crows, and then 6 of these crazy people, and then just watching them live in a house, and her trying to turn them into a team that can do, a little bit of good. The way, a Suicide Squad story usually works. And then we find out that Rockhard is actually really, really big giant guy because of something that we will explain later. But then they have to, instead of taking him and putting him into the van, bring the van to him. Then we get this first interaction this season between Homelander and his kind of dad, Soldier Boy. This dynamic is fascinating because Homelander rationalizes this as him needing help from Soldier Boy, but it is very clear to Soldier Boy pretty much the whole time that that's not what's going on. But he can't quite figure out what it is. And it isn't until the next scene when he's introduced to the Seven that I feel like he fully gets it. Then we get the big problem of the episode, which is the boys can't move Rockhard, but Rockhard also doesn't need to breathe. So the Teenage Kicks will be back soon and figure out a way to trick him into breathing. I don't know what it is about this visual, but I found this very upsetting. And then we go to Homelander's reintroduction of Soldier Boy. A couple of really fun things in this scene. First of all, this is where we get another sprinkle of, hey, something's going on with Black Noir, but it's unclear what. Really great line here from the president.
People get twitchy at rounding up their neighbors, but they'll flat out revolt if we raise taxes.
If they wanted to be a little more on the nose, they'll flat out revolt if the gas price goes up. Although I guess in this point it has to be raising taxes. And I love that pretty much everybody immediately knows what's going on with Homelander and Soldier Boy, especially Sage. And her main reaction is just embarrassment. This moment where Homelander doesn't look cool in front of Soldier Boy because the president assumes he's going to have milk.
Stephen. I'll also have a Manhattan.
Very good. The way he bobs his head around as he says that makes him feel very childish. Let's get the little mountain pornography scene. Quite funny. And then we spend a little time with MM. First of all, I love that the Teenage Kicks mansion, even though they are teenagers, has a wine cellar. And then you see the yearbook pictures of A-Train, Popclaw, Translucent, Mesmer, and Sage, along with the 3 that are here now. Weird that Rockhard is not on this wall of fame, even though presumably to the public he would at least still exist. She-Line has a litter box, I'm not going to show a picture of it, but very funny. Also, She-Line, great name for a Catwoman character. I guess it's a little easier when the names are supposed to sound kind of stupid, but every so often the boys runs up against a name where I'm genuinely surprised no one's used that yet. Firecracker's a good example of one. She-Line is another great one here. And then MM meets Countess Crow, Countess of the Crows. Little detail here. Love that the actual makeup she's using is Black Noir's Noir Black Liquid Eyeliner, because, yeah, Black Noir is a character who has black in his name, but we've never seen his face, none of them have. So he would be the one that would make the least sense if was wearing makeup. I guess maybe translucent back when he was alive. Now this moment here does kind of suggest that Countess Crow's image is that she is a Raven kind of superhero, when in reality, she's just a person who owns crows. I also really like the idea that the Teenage Kicks have their Instagram handles and their Twitter handles and hashtags and QR codes on their costumes. It's tacky, but it is the kind of tackiness that you see on people's cars now. So I'm not surprised that that's on some of these superheroes too. Also, another real fun detail. Turbo Rush was originally A-Train's drink, and maybe a day after he's dead, Homelander's already on the can. But yeah, this whole bit where they're recording the sponsored ad while they're taking someone out of their home, very funny. And then this line from Jetstreak, real funny.
Perfect.
Okay, great.
Okay, have fun at camp.
Also, I do really like the costumes of these characters. Let's look at them, these two specifically. Like I said, besides the Batman Earth 1 comparison, I like how She-Line's costume is sort of a cat-themed costume until it just turns into lingerie. But I like how Jetstreak's costume is a flight suit, because that is the theme of this hero. This hero who we're only going to see in this episode and then never again. So I kind of appreciate that they didn't just give him like a generic super suit. It feels believable. We get another one of those classic scenes where characters are having a conversation while driving and they are interrupted by something. It's enough of a thing now that when characters are having a conversation in a car and something exciting isn't happening, I just assume the car is going to crash. We get a beautiful
fucking diabolical.
But Jetstreak might have my favorite line of the episode, which is,
What? You're a dead socialist.
She-Line coughs up a hairball, very good. She actually seems to survive this fight, which I think is great. Maybe she'll come back in the future. Probably not, but maybe she could be on Gen V Season 3, or that Vought Mexico show, but probably not that show set in the past. And then they manage to trick Soldier Boy, and that gets Rock Hard to breathe, and then all the soups seem to die. Now we'll talk about how it seems like something else happened here, but still, an interesting scene. Then we get Sage's scene with Ashley, which I think is also really interesting, because this is where we find out what Sage is actually after, what she's getting out of this, and it turns out she just enjoys it, which sometimes that feels like it's not enough. But for a character like this who never had this kind of power, it is fun. It won't last forever, but I can see why at this point she would be enjoying herself. And we learned that Ashley is a Malignant. Probably can't do backflips like Malignant could in that one scene, but still a weird looking thing. And the boys loves weird looking powers. And then at the end of the episode, Butcher reunites with Terror, a character that shows up quite a few times in the book and hasn't really been a big part of the show, probably because having a dog on set is expensive. But we see Butcher also has the magic trophy, which he took from his father, because it belonged to Butcher's brother. Then the actual last scene of the episode, Homelander shows up, meets up with Deep, who calls Homelander's strategic move.
You're always playing 3D chess, aren't you?
Which is funny, all chess is 3D. Oh, I guess not on a computer, but 4D chess is the usual phrase. But the Deep is dumb. Again, this might not work if Chase Crawford wasn't really funny. And last thing in the episode, we see that Soldier Boy is still alive, or something. A couple of options for what this is. Perhaps he is a zombie. That could be a thing. Probably not what it is. I've seen people suggest online, and they have this conversation earlier, Soldier Boy and Homelander, where Homelander says,
Who knows, you might even fry the V right out of my blood.
Maybe that's what happened. Maybe Soldier Boy fried the V out of himself, which meant he wasn't killed by the virus. It did seem like he was at least very seriously affected by it. But Soldier Boy is one of the few characters who could conceivably maybe take all the V away from himself. But then the third option, maybe it's just too strong. And that would explain the line from the trailers about how Homelander is trying to get a version of V that makes him invincible. I imagine we'll find out that's what Soldier Boy has, because from back in the day, it's something about that mix of V means you can survive the plague. So now Homelander has something to do besides just hunt down Butcher. Overall, obviously this episode isn't as interesting as episode 1, but there's a lot of fun stuff here. I absolutely love the Teenage Kicks. I wish there were more of them. I wish we could spend more time with them. The dynamic between Butcher and Soldier Boy is adorable, hilarious, and it's interesting to see Ashley, a character who has been around the entire time, considering making some moves. Because maybe more than any active member of the Vought team, Ashley understands what's going on, she understands the stakes, and just believes there's very little she can do. I like that she tried to work with Sage, but Sage really wasn't useful. I imagine we'll see Ashley maybe defect to the good guys team, and that'll be interesting. And this idea of like a character having a secret face on the back of their head is not dissimilar from an episode of an interesting show called The Twilight Zone, where an alien secretly has an eye under his hat. And that reminds me of a video I watched recently by a creator I love, Captain Midnight. The video is part of his series called Showrunners, and in that episode, he looks at Rod Serling, the creator of The Twilight Zone, talking about his philosophy, the journey that led Serling to make The Twilight Zone, how things like censorship affected that. And yeah, found the whole video really interesting. And you can watch that video along with tons of others on this video sponsor, Nebula. Nebula is, say it with me, a subscription streaming service that I and a bunch of other really cool people helped create. Nebula has evolved so much over the last 7 years. Sure, you can still watch all my videos early and ad-free. You can watch videos by a bunch of other creators you probably already love. But one of the most exciting things about Nebula is our original programming. Tom Scott has a new series called England, where he goes to every English county to find something interesting. Did you check out this first episode where Tom Scott goes to Leicestershire and he visits a bell making factory? You see the entire process, learn how bells are made, and it is not how you would expect, especially since this bell making factory is hundreds of years old and they're still working with some of the same techniques from a century ago. Tom Scott even gets to use a sledgehammer to break one of the bells a little, because shockingly, it's hard to do. It's hard to use a sledgehammer to break an enormous bell. And each episode of England is going to be on Nebula for a week before it goes anywhere else. On top of that, we got a series that I love watching called Abolish Everything, where someone, maybe a comedian, maybe another YouTuber, makes an argument for something that should be abolished. They state their case, they make a very funny PowerPoint, the political establishment gets to weigh in, and then the audience decides what deserves to actually be abolished. This week they did the championship for the second season. They had a ton of really funny people on it. I've never been on that show, maybe sometime in the future. I think I'd be a fun abolitionist. And then later this year, although hopefully not too much later, Nebula's first original dramatic scripted series, Subliminal, comes out with the episode that I wrote, which I cannot wait for you guys to watch. Nebula is the best way to support all of the creators you already love and all the creators you don't know you're gonna love, but then you're gonna love them when you see them on Nebula. You can also download the videos to your phone, which saves you data when you're not at home, and there are not AI videos on Nebula, so this isn't gonna be like YouTube where you go on and you watch a video in a minute or two and you're like, something's off here, and then you realize like, oh, this video is AI. Which happens on YouTube and other platforms way more than I would like to admit. Nebula, we all got real stuff made by real creators, and that's why it's great. And a year of Nebula is already a steal at $60 a year, $5 a month. But if you go to go.nebula.tv/thenandocut, you can get a year of Nebula for just $30. That is $2.50 a month. It is an amazing deal. Again, go to go.nebula.tv/thenandocut to check it out. That's all I got. Stay safe. I'll see you next time.